Computer. Okay. Hello everyone. Andrea Miller here. Welcome to the Single No More Online Summit. We are here to give you the tools to feel confident that you can not only meet, but keep your Mr. Right this year. And I am so passionate about helping people find love because it really is the best feeling in the world. And for the longest time, I could not crack the code, but I think I finally did, hence being engaged. So now I want to share all my learnings and epiphanies with you all. You're going to love the topic today because it is all about falling for unavailable men. And oh my goodness, boy, was I doing this as well. So I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig, and you're going to love our guest today. Her name is Dr. Marni Feuerman. She is an author and licensed psychotherapist with a private practice in South Florida. She has published both academically and online as a freelance writer with The Post, The Huffington Post, Gottman Institute, YourTango.com, and Dr. Oz's ShareCare.com, amongst many others. And she is frequently quoted as an expert in the media on issues related to marriage, divorce, relationships, and love. So very well qualified. And then in the spring of 2019, just last year, she released her debut self-help book published by New World Library called Ghosted and Breadcrumbed: Stop Falling for Unavailable Men and Get Smart About Healthy Relationships. And I'm so delighted to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes. Did I say your last name right?
You did.
Okay,
you did.
Good. I realized that after. I was like, oh, no. It's Wow, I am so excited to get into this topic because if I think back as to all the things that I did wrong, if I think about what all my clients are, having problems with, they're pretty much just going for the wrong guy, and it's because they're unavailable. So I'm so excited to get into this topic with you. I love that you attack it head on. And I think we're really going to get into the good stuff because you really go into the why as to why we do that. So I guess my first question is, this is one of the biggest pitfalls that people fall into. Why? Let's just start there and go from there.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but what I think like to do is I like to think about certainly behavior that people are doing now. So the way that they're acting and behaving now, and maybe making some mistakes, but really going deeper into somebody's background, their family history. If you think about your family, what we call the family of origin, or family that you were born into, these are where a lot of these patterns just begin to emerge. We've heard the term attachment theory. It's very popular right now. I think this is a tremendous portion of it. So I think it's really good for people to get an understanding of what attachment is and what are attachment patterns and secure versus insecure attachment. So if people look at their first caregivers, usually the parents, and what it was like for them in their family growing up, how responsive were these caretakers, how consistent they were they abusive, were they, were there really bad communication patterns, did they shut you down when you had a feeling? So there's all kinds of things that we would want to look at to kind of see where some of this stuff comes up. And what ends up happening is we push it, it's not that we consciously push it back, but it's almost like running the show from behind the scenes. So even though we grow up and we get older and we get into these romantic relationships, sometimes that stuff is still at play. And so it creates what we expect from people and also what we think is comfortable or normal. And so we may not know any different. So when we're with somebody and it feels like, the way things always have been for you, because maybe you had a really, not the best bond or connection, let's say with your parents, or there was inconsistency. And so you're with an inconsistent or unavailable boyfriend or girlfriend, and your parents were, it feels comfortable or normal. And we're not really questioning it. We have learned to define that as love or the way it's supposed to be. And so we don't have a lot that tells us it should be different. But on some level, we kind of know, hey, this doesn't quite feel right. But sometimes we can't pinpoint it, and we're not always relating it back to our family histories. So I would always tell people to start there. You're going to have to do a bit of a deep dive into what your family was like. And I always kind of say it's not necessarily to blame them. So this isn't sort of an expedition to kind of go and say, you know, your mom was terrible, your dad did this, this was awful. I think it's more about connecting the dots and seeing how is it seeping into what you're doing today. Because where it's going to be activated the most is in your romantic relationships. So you might see a little bit in friendships and other areas and perhaps work and stuff like that. But where it's really going to come full force is when you're in your romantic relationships. It re-triggers all of that attachment stuff.
Yeah, you wrote in your book, you say relationships are amazing, but they're also painful and confronting. And that's exactly what you're saying here. And I think that's what I had to realize too, was that, like you're saying, when you get into a relationship, essentially, this is where your underlying, I don't want to say issues, but, you know, ways that you were brought up and the way you feel and associate with love starts to come to the surface. And sometimes it can be quite painful. So I love what you're saying there. It's basically like, okay, just realize the impact that your upbringing will have on your romantic relationships. And it doesn't mean that you can't change it. I think the more that you're aware of it, it just more might give you the indication of, this is how I'm reacting. And is it because of this person, or is it because of something that I kind of was dealing with when I was young? And I love that you say it, because I thought it was interesting when you're saying about, you know, we might not be aware of it. I know I was always falling for the unavailable man. And people used to always say, so my parents divorced when I was 11. So I'm sure there's a whole, you know, you go into your book about it there. It's
about different events. Yeah, certainly there's things that come up.
It probably is a big deal, even though I probably brushed it off like it wasn't. And so, you know, I definitely went to a lot of counselors, and they used to say, well, you know, you're probably going for the unavailable man because, you know, your dad probably wasn't around for a little while, and that probably feels comfortable to you. But it always was weird to me to say, but why would I go for someone who is unavailable? Why would I, like, I had no choice in that, right? But at the same time, you would think I would learn and go, why wouldn't I want to be with someone who's showing me love? What would you say to someone
right
in my situation?
I like people to really learn to not confuse love with chemistry. And just because you feel a strong attraction. And certainly with anybody, you're going to need chemistry and attraction, you know, so that, but that's not it. That's not all. So I think someone has to still make you feel safe. They have to be reliable. They have to be honest. They have to follow through, that they do what they say they're going to do. You're not going to want to see, you know, serious issues like addiction, or they can't seem to hold down a job, or they're mean to people, or, you know, so just because you feel this pull to them and you feel chemistry and there's a strong attraction, and the sex could also really be good, which then even messes it up so, you know, so much more, that you have to keep the rational, logical part of your brain online in order to have success with love. And it's really hard to break up with somebody that, you know, on a logical level is not good for you, but you feel what you feel. It really messes us up. It's a tough thing. But I want people to seriously think about their lives, their futures, who they're committing to, who they want to have children with possibly. So this is one of the most important choices you're going to make in your life. And I work a lot in my private practice with couples. And one of the things I'm always so curious about is, when I speak with people, and I always wonder if they saw certain things in their partners that were existing at the beginning. So even while they were dating, and I would say somewhere up to 80–90% are usually telling me, yes, they were always like this. He did this when I was dating, or she did that when we were going out, or they're telling me these very significant things, but they've brushed them aside or made excuses or ignored them. And that's why it's so critical to certainly have an understanding of love, how hormones and chemistry factor in, but also how you may be tripping up because of different things that have happened in your history and with your family, or different events that have happened to you that are playing a part in your choices. And certainly your own personality and temperament too. And people who are in like more of a helping profession, like myself included, I hear a lot from nurses, social workers, therapists. If you have this natural inclination also to help people or be really empathic or be a highly sensitive person, you're even more at risk because you want to right away give people the benefit of the doubt. You want to help. You see their potential. You see the little boy in the man, and that pulls us in too. And so I would say there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle, but you can uncover them and figure them out so that you can make a much better choice for yourself and not keep falling for the same type or someone who isn't emotionally available to you. One of the biggest things I talk about in the book is when to know when to stop and give up, and how if you're trying harder and you're bending yourself into a pretzel to try to make something work and it isn't, what you can do about it as well.
Do you give a time frame on how long? Like, you did make an interesting comment.
Yeah, good question.
That you can't actually figure out if they're unavailable right away. It actually, you said you need to be in the relationship for a few months, perhaps, to see it. But then once you see it, I'd suggest you go, okay, read the red flags for what they are. So I don't know if you actually give a time frame or.
I think, well, the main thing with the time frame, I would say, is sex. Because if you're just dating and you're not having sex with them, you're going to be better off if you do need to walk away. Because I think the sex also brings up the bonding hormones in us, the oxytocin. So we're going to feel even more connected or more bonded to them. And again, just because you have a bond doesn't mean it's a healthy one. It could go on a continuum from unhealthy to being really healthy. So the bonded connection can vary. But having sex, I think, is going to make the bond stronger. It'll be harder to get out of. But I would say determining what is changeable, what isn't. Like, are there certain things about the person that you think, hey, this might be a changeable thing? And I strongly encourage people to communicate, to say it, and to assert themselves. Where I think you get into troubled waters is when you try harder and harder and harder, or something isn't changing even though you really clearly communicated it to the person. So if you said something like, you often tell me you're going to call me and then you don't call or don't hear from you for days. It doesn't really feel good to me. Could you please just, if you're going to say you're going to call, please call. Or otherwise I start worrying or it just doesn't feel right. Okay, so you are laying, and I know it's maybe more of a simplistic example, but if you're laying your needs out there or what's good for you, what's right for you, or at least opening a conversation about it, if someone says okay and doesn't do it, okay, well, that's bad, because they might be saying I'll do it and then they don't, which isn't good. So I would say you're going to want to pay much more attention to the behavior than the words. But if you've expressed yourself and it goes ignored, or someone doesn't maybe explain themselves in a way that makes sense, they may say, I get in trouble for work. I really do want to talk to you, but there's this new rule at work. I just can't respond right away, but I see what's going on and that you don't like it. So as soon as I get off work, I promise to call you. I promise to text. So I'm really not trying to hurt you with that. See the response, see what happens. But if someone just says, yes, I'll do that, but there's no consistency, they're not reliable. They don't follow through. They're not emotionally engaging with you to the same degree or close to it that you are. I would say see the red flags, kind of know, when they say like at, I guess is it poker, know when to fold. You gotta know when to fold. You gotta know when to say, you know what, I'm done really pushing and trying, and I'm doing things differently. I'm putting up with a lot. I feel like it's starting to go against my value system here with this relationship. I think it's time to just say, that's it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about communicating. I'm a big advocate for just speaking what's right for you. You don't have to tell them what to do, but just speak what's right for you. I'm also a big advocate for, if you're someone who gets really attached when you have sex, hold off.
It's probably not best for you.
Yeah, just hold off. You know, if you want to have sex with someone, go with someone that you just want to have sex with. But if it's someone that you want for the long term, just remove it from the equation. That way you don't feel like you're giving something up before they are. And, you know, I loved when you were saying before about how women go for the chemistry. When I was reading your book, I realized that, and what we were saying before about, we all get those initial, you know, attraction and hormones going, and we think, oh my God, this is the feeling I should have. And you're like, yeah, you're having an amazing feeling. You're attracted to someone. But when people, and I literally thought about this when you were writing your book, or when I was reading your book, and it was, but that's not the feeling. When people say, I want to be in love, those are not the descriptors they talk about. You know, it's, you're going to feel those initial feelings of chemistry and sex and attraction in the beginning. But when you say, I want love, I want the greatest feeling in the world, like you said, that's all about being safe, supported, seen, depended on. So like you said, pay attention to those, but that's not actually the end goal in terms of what you're actually seeking. You're kind of going off the initial indicators, but you're not, you know, I feel like we all want that love in the end.
Right.
So
it's fantasy. It's
yeah.
idealization in the beginning, and we have a lot of hope. And I think those are wonderful feelings. They're great to have, but I want people to be very, very attuned and with themselves and with that relationship to see, is this really going the direction that makes me feel good, and I'm getting what I deserve, and I'm not just accepting bad behavior or someone who's unavailable to me just because that's what I'm used to. That it's something I no longer want to accept in my life.
Yeah, and like you were saying with the attachment styles, it's basically just knowing, hey, I might be attracted to someone just because of how I've been brought up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the person that I'm meant to be with. And so I think, you know, again, you go through them in your book, and that's why I say just read it. It's a super interesting topic to understand why you're being attracted to these people, and if they tend to usually not be someone, like you're saying, who's giving you the love you deserve. This explains why you're initially attracted to them, but those are then behaviors you can change. What you say is, you actually say, it's like having healthy habits. You know, it's like, for me, I love a Cinnabon. Love it. It's the best ever. But and it looks good and it tastes good, but I know it's bad for me. But you know, I can change that. I can choose not to go there. So if you're attracted to someone, which now you know why, I'll give you an example and use myself. You know, I thought I was totally secure. And this is when you read the attachment styles. I thought I was secure. Yep. Totally, you know, got this. Great upbringing, no problem. And then I had an intimacy coach tell me that I was avoidant. And it was that first time that I went, me? Like, I'm avoidant? I don't think so. And then I went back and I read, you know, what avoidance do. And it was like fear of commitment, you know, doesn't say I love you, runs away. I'm like, oh God, that was me. So it really realized, it was the first time that I took a look at myself and thought, wait a minute, maybe there is things that I can change. Maybe I'm acting in a way that I wasn't conscious of. And like you said in the beginning, it's subconscious, which I think is fascinating. So, but what I'm trying to say is, I think I want to give people the understanding that they can change it. They can go, oh, this is why I was doing that. I don't need to do that. That wasn't serving me. I wasn't getting the goal. I wasn't getting the guy in the end, right?
Right, and I think the biggest part of that example is that you develop self-awareness, and self-awareness is one of the biggest things to help you make better choices. And sometimes it is something within us, you know, so we're choosing emotionally available guys, but what is it about us that keeps us going for that over and over again? Maybe picking the same, you know, the same type of person. And it's okay to like certain personality traits, like someone who's outgoing or someone who's funny or whatever. But you don't want to go for somebody where the traits are going to really negatively affect how you relate to that person.
Right.
That's something very different, and that's
Right.
something that can be
Right.
really comes to life with our attachment history, because we can create this seesaw effect sometimes with people. And sometimes we're also, or even whether it's a partner or us, another style that's interesting, one of the insecure styles, because there's avoidant, anxious, and then we have what's called fearful avoidant, which is the back and forth. Usually this might emerge from trauma in your history or abuse in your history. So a part of you really wants and desires intimacy, closeness, and connection, but a part of you really fears it at the same time. So if you had a caretaker or a parent you feared, but of course as kids we still want the parent. We always want them and their love, yet we've, let's say, feared them because they were abusive to us. So that push-pull is going to come out then again in your relationships later on.
Yeah, that was what we were. So we were probably the worst combination. I was avoidant and he was anxious. So he would come to me and I'd run away.
That's a serious, yes.
And then
you go and
I'd go back to him and he'd be like, you know, because then because I'd pull away, he would pull away. So I'd come back to him, he'd come to me, I'd pull away, and we do this. And
that's going for a really, really, really long time. So, and it's
definitely not 4 years. 4 years.
Oh, yes. It's a breakup, get back together. Breakup, get back together.
Yep.
Endless. They call these endless breakups. And the other thing is, I also think it's a positive if somebody's willing to get help. So let's say the two of you said, look what we're doing. Like every time I come towards you, you move away. Then when you come back towards me, I move away. Do we need help for this? Should we go see somebody who can maybe shed some light on this back and forth so we can figure out, are we for each other? Is this resolvable? Do we need to call it a day here and just move on? And if somebody is totally unwilling to get help, that's a big red flag also, because I don't expect people to be perfect, but it's nice to know that someone, especially if you end up committing to them in some way, that if the going gets tough, that they're willing to go get some help and not too proud to get the help, or they're willing to invest time, energy, effort, and that they desire self-awareness and personal growth too. So that's going to be important.
So the situation I'm telling you about, this is actually now my fiance.
Okay.
So in the end, yes, we did seek help. We went to a couple
good.
and coaches. And again, because we wanted to make sure, we saw all the other good things about us. We wanted to be together. We were great together. We're a great fit, but we were doing this dance that didn't feel good. And it didn't make us feel connected and in love. And it was, again, it was just, in the end, it was that self-awareness of what we were doing, why we were doing it. We didn't need to do it. It didn't serve us. And once we
figured it out,
once we were able to stop that dance. So I guess the reason I use myself as an example is because just because certain things aren't working doesn't mean that you don't.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's always wrong.
These are big things that are going to be happening, but you can work through it. But once you realize what's going on, and once you both take a hard look at yourself, and like you said, be open to seeing someone who can help. It's great. It's really hard for us to kind of self-evaluate. I needed someone else to say to me, "You're avoidant." I was like, "What?" But I was like, I probably am.
Yeah, and I love to hear that story, because that just speaks that sometimes it is right, but your stuff from your history, or what we tend to term emotional baggage, know.
Yep.
Of course, it's not doesn't sound like the nicest word, but it's true that your stuff and his stuff and how it comes together and creates this dynamic was getting in your way. But I would also imagine that you both learned so much more about yourselves, and also how to bring yourselves, to each other, your problems, your feelings, your needs. You figured out the pathway to each other so that you could use each other as a resource, that safe haven, all that good stuff. But you needed an outside person to kind of shine the light down on it so you could see
and when
what
they
was
say
happening.
when they say dating patterns, I realized this is what I was doing. And again, these counselors were like, you're going to keep doing this. Like, there is no question you're going to keep doing it. And I kept thinking, I don't want to keep doing it.
Right.
I'm 39 now. So at this time when we were going through this was, late 30s. And I was like, I'm running out of time. I need to figure this out. So I think that's also why I was so headstrong about figuring it out, because I thought, I just can't keep doing this. I'm just going to go. I give it up and I go search for something perfect. But nobody, that's a fantasy as well. And that's a fairy tale, which I was totally falling into. I was like, I totally fell for it. The movie's got me. He's going to be perfect. I'm going to be perfect. And we weren't, but
yes,
it just cracks me up.
Yeah. And I have plenty of my own stories. I spent most of my 20s making very bad choices. I could completely, relate it to stuff from my family history. Like, a lot of stuff was there, and I had a couple different therapists. But one of the other things that, and there back then, I mean, now the self-help industry has just exploded.
Totally.
But way back when I was struggling, there really wasn't a lot out there. And so I feel like one of the reasons I really wanted to put out this book, it's kind of the book that I wish I had as well when I was, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s and dating, because it took me a long time to figure it out. Thank God I did make a good choice and I did marry the right person. But I had a lot of almosts, and I shudder to think about that. But I think there's a lot more science, good science and research that we have now as well. And I like people to take advantage of it, because we have some good stuff out there. We know a lot more about the brain, about chemistry, about what's called interpersonal neurobiology, about attachment. There's so much more information, and people can take advantage of this so that they don't keep repeating these patterns and making these mistakes.
And like you and I were saying earlier, not everyone can afford a therapist.
Right.
So, that's why all these resources, like this free resource here, is amazing. Because I know that, again, for those 4 years, I was diving into books. I was diving into podcasts. I was so trying to figure it out. What's wrong with me? Why can't I commit to a good man? Why do I keep running away? But yeah, you're saying, it's amazing to have these resources like your book and this out there. So I want to go back to the unavailable men, because now I feel like we understand, okay, why we've been falling for these people and why we're attracted to these people. We can't necessarily control. This could be coming from our upbringing, which again, you're saying has a huge impact, and I totally get it. So main thing, just be aware of it. But there's interesting things that you say in the book about the type of man that these unavailable men are. You actually call it an emotional roller coaster. You actually say that these men are not capable of loving women back. And I think that's a really good thing for people to understand, because while they may appear to be into you and perfect and giving you this attention, the bottom line is they're not going to give you what you want in the end, which is, again, why it's kind of a waste of time. But so tell me a little bit more about, let's talk about that a little bit, and why these guys are great in theory, but awful in practice.
Yes. I mean, we have some that are certainly more what I would call like the innocent versions of the unavailable men, perhaps because of their upbringing. They might have avoidant or fearful avoidant attachment. But I also think there's a socialization factor or cultural factors involved too. So they may not be able to perhaps verbalize or articulate their emotions, their needs, at their inner world as well, just because of how they were raised. I think just raising men today, I think a lot of issues have come to light too. I think they're raised quite different than women. We are naturally more relational. We naturally can get more of an internal read on our feelings, and we verbalize them much easier. So men, I think, are socialized to be more task-oriented, achievement-oriented. Oh, shut those feelings down. Vulnerability is given a really bad rap. It's seen as weak. We now even have this term toxic masculinity, Oh, wow. So that is a piece of it. And I would say some of these men, it's just more innocent. They just don't have the knowledge or the emotional intelligence to emotionally connect with you.
Yeah.
And then I would say on the other end of the continuum is we have some men who are narcissists or narcissistic sociopaths. They're
Mm,
emotionally abusive.
mm,
They want to cut you down. They want to manipulate you. They want to throw all kinds of barriers in the way to bonding or connecting with you.
yeah.
Some of them may be addicts or workaholics or porn addicts, whatever it is. They're doing things that are going to completely get in the way of your intimacy and connection with
Mm,
them. And
mm,
so there's this full range. I've also seen it where just like with us in our history, sometimes we've had things happen to us that are nobody's fault. Like it could be divorce, it could be somebody died,
mm,
something like that. And so they may have had those significant events as well.
yeah.
And sometimes I'm seeing just a lot of what I would call unprocessed trauma. It's kind of a little more of a clinical way of saying that.
Mm,
So
mm,
people have experienced trauma on some level in their childhoods,
mm,
but they haven't been able to make sense of it, understand the impact of it, do something about it.
mhm,
Sometimes we have where maybe some kids have had a different experience, and so they've maybe gotten help or whatever it is, and they've been able to
mm,
process what's happened to them, or they do so later in life. But you may get someone who just they
yeah.
don't even know, they don't really have the self-awareness that they are putting up all of these walls. And
That's
so again, it's about knowing, all right, I am seeing this and I'm
mm,
trying to do something about it, but this person is just resisting me,
yeah,
fighting me. They don't want to do it. They shut down all attempts at my
yeah.
communication for it. They don't want to get help. How are they responding to this?
Yeah, that's interesting because if I think about myself, I could think that yeah, from a guy meeting me, I could have looked really good. I'm fun, I'm pretty sociable, easygoing, no baggage that I thought of. But yeah, I had stuff in my childhood. I had divorce. I had a really strict parent who was very critical. So from the outside, I could have looked like I was the perfect thing. But getting into a relationship with me, I was never committing. I was never probably going that deep. I was never getting intimate. So I think we forget that when we're dating a man, they could have gone through those things as well. And that's a great point that you make, is thinking, well, hey, everything that we've gone through, this person has had a completely different upbringing as well. And they might have some underlying things that they don't know about. And that's why they're acting that way. So let's not assume they're perfect. Let's assume that they've had, their own experience. And, we got to just work out. I think the main thing to work out, and you wrote this in your book, which is amazing, is whether someone is open to giving, but also receiving love. So I love that line, because I thought, oh my gosh, that's the goal. And that's how you work out whether this person is good for you right now. You work out that they're open to giving and receiving love, because that's really what you want. If you're just the one giving, it's going to be a life sucker. But if it's reciprocal, that's what you're aiming for, right?
Right, absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, sort of like when to say I've done everything I can, or I've even done my own
mm-hmm,
personal work,
mm-hmm,
and I realize I don't have a partner in doing this work, and things aren't I'm not feeling good about where we are in this relationship. I don't feel safe. I don't feel secure. I
yeah,
don't feel heard. I feel ignored, unimportant, not a priority.
yeah.
Whatever's coming up for you, and whether or not you have a willing partner in doing whatever work you need to do to figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's the good thing. Like we were saying earlier, communicating. If it doesn't start to feel right, communicate with that person. If they're not open to working with you to figure it out and say, oh, okay, let's see if we can work this out. And they just either run away, or they give up, or they make you feel bad, or they try to confuse you.
Mm.
Those are
Or
all
gaslight you. It's really
red
your fault.
flags. Yeah, like again, right away. And they might think, oh, and I love in your book, you start to go on, there's a chapter or an area called My Love Can Fix Him. And boy, did I try to do that a ton of times. Oh my goodness. And
That was one of my big problems too.
like you were saying with us being helpers, we always want to fix them. And I love that you address that, because it just doesn't, it just doesn't serve you. It
Doesn't work.
you know, and you're trying to be nice, but you're kind of like, you know, giving up yourself in the process. And again, I gave myself up too many times to men.
It becomes completely out of balance.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you feel like you're giving, and
Yeah.
you're helping, and your emotional energy is going into the relationship, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not pulling any of their weight. And it doesn't mean it can't fluctuate back and forth at times, but ideally you want a healthy dependency as opposed to what we've heard the word codependency quite a bit. And codependency means you're over functioning, you're healthier, you're able to do these things, but you're with somebody who isn't. And so then it becomes codependent as opposed to healthy dependency where it's balanced and there's a good back and forth of this and that flow of that type of energy throughout the relationship.
And this is where, again, like you were saying, you come back to that attachment style going, why am I doing that? Why am I feeling like that's normal? Why am I, if I realize that that's, because that was normal to me, but I realize, and I know better now that it's not, and it doesn't feel good, then you can do something about it. And I think the other interesting thing, I said this to a client the other day, is I feel like with these unavailable men, doing the sex and the chemistry and giving a woman that in the beginning is actually quite easy because it's very non-committal. So I want people to realize that the committing, just like for myself, when I wasn't doing it, that's the hard part. So when they are committing to you, that's actually a really good sign. And anybody can just, you know, charm you, dine you, and have sex with you. That's easy.
That's very easy.
Men are different. So don't see that as the indicators of, oh my gosh, I want to be with this person, because anybody can do that.
Yes.
So the way to feel special or understand is if they do hang around, if they do open up to you, if they do communicate with you, if they, you know, do all the things that I think deep down we all really want.
And they respect your boundaries. They respect if you're like, hey, you know, I really want to prefer to take this a little slow, you know, let's get to know each other a little better and all of that. And this certainly isn't, I think the key is that, because this is not like religious, a moral, whatever judgment about sex. It's just your goal has to align with the sex too. So if he's thinking, you know, I just want to get my rocks off, I just want to stressfully release here, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I really like this guy, I really want him as a boyfriend, you know, he's great. But you two are now on different planes, and then you have sex with you thinking one thing, him thinking the other. That's where it's problematic. And so I tell people, you know, that if you can have sex, you should be able to talk about sex. And I'm amazed how many people won't talk about it. They won't bring it up. You know, and you know, talk about, wow, our rational, logical parts of our brains going like flatlining there. They really do flatline. And sometimes we're just not making the smartest choice for ourselves. And so, you know, I think that's where you can hold a lot of power. That's where you can feel like you're really getting your footing. Perhaps if you see that there's potential in the relationship. And so I would say just be really careful about it, because you're going to feel much, much worse if the guy ghosts you and just ditches you. And you've had sex, you're going to feel so much worse than if you hadn't and if you waited. And someone who really cares about you, they're not going to disappear because you for sure. Not. They would have done it anyway if they disappeared. I'm not going to wait on that. I'm not going to wait on you. They would have done that anyway. So to me, it's probably better to know that they were going to do that.
Oh, you're making a good point. It's, you know, it's like stand up for yourself. You know, if they're not treating you well, if they're not, like you said, if they're ghosting you, if you feel like you're being breadcrumbed, stand up for yourself. And if you can't, then have a look at your boundaries. Have a look at why you're not able to stand up to this person. Why are you letting them treat you the way you wouldn't treat them, or all those things? So it's really important, because that's, otherwise, again, like you're saying, it's going to be imbalance. You got to make sure you're on the same page. I said to a client the other day, I thought this was really good, because she is doing the typical fall for an unavailable man. I told her, I said, do not act like your boyfriend and girlfriend until you're boyfriend and girlfriend.
Right.
Do not give those things away, and the way you would act, care for him, have sex with him, do all these sweet things for him. Do not do any of those things until you're actually a boyfriend, girlfriend, because he's going to take what he can get. That is for sure.
Yes.
He's gonna get as much as you let him. So I know
we are wired differently. Yes,
yeah.
men and women are really wired differently in that
yeah.
part. So remembering that and using
I don't want to play games, and there's that game playing, but you kind of have to I just call it standing up for yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really have to be a game like you're withhold, because I think some people are afraid they're going to give off that signal, but it's not. If you're saying and you're sharing why and how come you're doing it and why you want to wait.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that extra little bit of why. Hey, I'm going to call it a night because I'm going to do this, or hey, I'd love to hear from you because of this. Like just be really open about why you're doing the things you do or saying the things you're saying, and then they choose, and at that point you just have to kind of let it be what it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
You make another good line in the book that I want to lastly ask you is that you say you must live in the same area to actually get to know each other and see if your relationship can work out. I thought that was super interesting because obviously with online these days, and you were even saying sometimes we fall for people that are at a distance because we still can keep this kind of fantasy going, and it's not really the everyday. So I wanted to get your thoughts on where that came from.
Yeah, I would just strongly discourage what's called geographically undesirable people. And that doesn't mean there's not exceptions to the rule or that this does work out on occasion. I agree with that. But I just think you're setting yourself up for not the best situation based on just kind of what you said. There's more fantasy than reality. We idealize. It's easier for people to, I think, fake us out, seem like they're great and wonderful. But if you're not seeing them, within, I guess, reasonably consistently in your day-to-day real life, you're not going to know, and you could waste a huge amount of time. Like some people keep a long distance relationship going for a year or two, where you would have maybe, let's say if they were here or you were in the same vicinity, in 2 months you would have realized this wasn't the right person for you.
Yeah.
I just want people to be really careful about that. People can easily present themselves differently when they're far away. And then there's a lot of intensity around the times where you see them. So if you do end up getting together, there's a huge amount of intensity. I also tend to see a lot of avoidance of talking about difficult topics because people think, I'm only seeing them for a weekend, then he's got to fly back. Why would I stir the pot now? Why would I say something that's on my mind or cause a fight? Yeah. So I just don't think it's a very realistic foundation of a relationship.
Yeah.
So I would just caution people, to really be careful about that. That if there's not a plan to be in the same place at the same time, and it's not like a crazy upheaval of your lives, okay, but otherwise I wouldn't encourage it.
I love that. I never really thought of it that way, but you're right. Being in the same city is going to just help you work out quicker, whether you guys work as a couple. And in real life, you're together a lot and you live together on a day-to-day basis. So I think we all want to save time. When we look for someone, the last thing we want to do is draw it out. So I think that's a really good, plus it's also a really good test of the male to see if he's really interested in you. Does he, like you said, want to be around you a lot? Does he, if you're not in the same city, is there plans to do that? Or are you then staying in touch on a pretty consistent basis to work out whether this is a good thing? If he keeps pushing you off or not really taking those steps in a pretty short period of time, I would think like within 1 or 2 months, that's a red flag, I would say. Because you want someone who wants to be with you, wants to get to know you, wants to progress things forward. And if they don't, that is not good.
Right. And for people who do the online dating and the apps, I would say just keep a certain area where you could easily see this person, consistently. So that's a 20-mile radius, whatever works for you. But I don't see any reason if you're in you're in Florida and they're in New York, or you're in California and they're in Idaho, or I just don't see the purpose in responding to people who reach out to you on social media or those apps or dating sites that don't live close by.
And that's the beauty of
So,
online dating too, is that it shows you everyone in your area. And I think
yes.
I think I agree with you. I say give those people more points than someone who is not in your area. Because again, next thing you know, you could probably waste another year on oh, this is going to be amazing and he's going to do this. And, you go on about, definitely in the book, about the unavailable, how much they say a lot, they promise a lot, but there is no real action.
Don't deliver.
That is totally what I was falling for. I was falling for the promises. And so when I, started dating my now fiance, I dated him because I knew he was real. I knew that he was with me. I knew that we could do stuff on the weekend, this weekend. And even though it didn't feel right, even though it didn't feel, these huge, amazing electric sparks, I knew he was real and I was ready for something real. And then I obviously had to coach myself to, make sure that this was something that I stayed with, because why would I want to keep going for the people who aren't real? But boy, did they make some promises and boy, did I fall for it.
Right. Right.
Oh, what a great time.
Good. You did it. You figured it out, Andrea.
Yeah. Well, I called it forcing myself. I literally had to force myself and go, this is a good man. Let's work out why we aren't committed, why I can't commit to him. Why is this? And that's when I went on this journey of figuring it out. And I finally realized why. It definitely came back to my own self-worth. I clearly didn't feel like I deserved this guy's love. It's so sad that we as women feel strange that a guy can love us. And that's why we go for the people who don't love us. And it is so counterintuitive, but I realized that, I got told that I was, had big thighs. I got told that my hair, don't change your hair. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't be you. And so I realized then I was being so hard on myself, and no wonder why I couldn't accept this person's love. And the minute I almost healed myself and went,
right, you think something's wrong with them. Right, something's wrong with them. They love me.
Right.
Something's wrong with them.
Yeah, what is wrong with you?
Up. And so the guy that matches our internal view of ourselves and our deep-rooted fears, that's the guy we let in because it aligns with that. And so it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy to disregard that and not go with that, but I would say it's so tremendously important to kind of say, yes, this guy really loves me for me. He doesn't care about the size of my thighs or my hair or whatever, that this is real and it's okay. And it may, it's taking me time to get used to this feeling, but I want to, because I realize that this is right. This is good.
It's like if there was, and I didn't think I wasn't loved when I was young. And I know, again, we always, like you say, we love our parents and we love that they brought us up, that they put us in the situation we have, but we do need to accept that if there was any sort of trauma or lack of love or again, maybe a divorce or anything, that there is a part of us that might not feel completely loved. And therefore, when we have a good guy who really actually does like us for who we are, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And we need to realize that that's not wrong. It's actually what we really desire. We just might have to get used to it a little bit and realize why does that feel weird?
Yes.
And that's really it. But like we said, the key is when we're searching for a guy, we need to, in the early stages, make sure that he's open to both giving and receiving love. And I think that's a really good indicator of the type of guys we need to look for and why.
Yes, and in the book, there's all kinds of checklists about how
I love the checklist.
Makes you feel about red flags. There's all of that stuff is in there.
There's no mistaking in the book who these guys are, and also who you are in terms of coming to the relationship. And you're going to be able to figure that out. And that's what's so good. You just get right to it, which is amazing. So, thank you so much. Is there anything else on this topic that you want to add to that we maybe haven't addressed?
I think we covered a lot, so that's great. And certainly if people want more or like what they heard, they can get the book. Luckily, like you said, it's cheap, so not everyone can necessarily afford a therapist, but so there's a lot of good stuff in the book. It's available everywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And then also if people go to my website, which is drmarnionline.com, DrMarnionline.com. If they sign up, there's a couple places on the website you can just sign up for my newsletter. You will have access to a free webinar that I do where I go through a lot of different reasons why you might be attracting the wrong partner, why you are having repetitive unhealthy relationship patterns. And I go a little bit more into the book, into this webinar about what's within you that might be going on. So a little less about the guys and more about you, so that you can be more self-reflective and self-aware as to what you might be doing to allow this in your life. And so that's a free webinar that anybody can get for a limited time. So, but I enjoyed this discussion. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I highly recommend doing that, because again, I know for me, the minute I started really getting more aware of myself, what I was doing, what I was bringing to the table, whether I was sabotaging, whether I was anything, I only really started to see a big change when I looked at myself. So I love that you bring that up. I love that you address that. I love that you help people with it. I love that it's free. Like
Yes.
from a psychotherapist, like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for making that available to everybody. That is super kind of you. And yeah, go check it out, because it's amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time. And yeah, I'll have all that information down in the email so everyone has it, but really appreciate all your gifts that you're giving and helping people find their one. So if anyone is having any trouble and not getting the outcome they want in love, definitely go check it out.
Thank you so much. I think what you're putting out there with this summit is wonderful too. It's great.
I love it. Okay, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.